Thank you for joining us for our webinar, 7 Reasons Why Value Stream Integration Improves Software Quality Assurance. Our presenter today is Matt Engerer. Matt is a Senior Solutions Architect at TaskTop, where he works with software development teams to integrate their ALM and DevOps tools. He has over 15 years experience in enterprise mission-critical system implementations and support for global multinational companies. He's held a variety of QA and test leadership roles and enjoys sharing his passion and experience with software testing with others and through the articles that he writes, as well as presentations like this one. So without further ado, here's Matt.
Thank you, Sarah, for that introduction. I appreciate it. Hey, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. The agenda today is really going to focus on 7 reasons why value stream integration improves software quality assurance. Just recently, in fact, a few weeks ago, Software Test Professional magazine actually featured this article that I wrote a few months ago on these various topics. The first thing that we're going to talk about today is how defect detection percentage can help improve your organization's software quality and why value stream integration is an inherent component of calculating DDP. We're also going to look at how VSI, or value stream integration, eliminates QA as an afterthought activity for software releases, and how driving effective change impact analysis, control, and management of change requests. We're also going to look at how what I call cross-platform artifact alerting illuminates both redundancy and inefficiency in your quality assurance and testing processes. And then we're going to take a peek at why shifting left contains costs while also helping you to aid in root cause analysis and traceability. Then we'll look at reducing the ping-ponging between your development and testers and why developer-tester alignment is of utmost importance. And finally, we're going to delve into the reasons why one size truly does not fit all as it relates to testing centers of excellence and how a new paradigm known as testing excellence centers, otherwise TECs, are being adopted by organizations across the world. So I guess we'll get started with this quickly at a high level. So what is value stream integration? The definition that we like to convey is we're connecting the people and activities in the software delivery tool chain by automating the flow of value from ideation to production. Now, that's one sentence that sums up value stream integration. Now, within that sentence and in between the various people, processes, and tools that make up your value stream, there is quality measures that take place, or quality activities rather, that take place. And without going into all the specifics just yet of what those are, I want to remind everybody that quality is everyone's responsibility. And this was said by a very famous professor, academic, Deming, many years ago. So I just want to reiterate that. It's something that myself as a quality assurance and testing practitioner have often said to my teams in different consulting engagements, not just my quality assurance engineers that worked for me, but the stakeholders that were my counterparts in different cross-functional teams that I interacted with. We are all responsible for keeping our finger on the pulse as it relates to quality across the organization. So with that being said, let's take a holistic look of how value stream integration can tie businesses and consumers together. So within the realm of software delivery lifecycle, we have a lot of personas working for each other and with each other, right? We have project managers, we have business analysts, we have developers, testers, operation personnel, and of course, the folks that consume our software, our end users. These could be stakeholders within your organization, or they could be individual consumers out there in the wild for software as a service companies, as an example. All of these different personas are involved in not only the creation of work artifacts such as specifications, user stories, epics, and features, but also, writing the code that's necessary to build the software, or, deploying the schemas in the database, or configuring what have you within different products and applications that make up your value stream. Okay? As part of that, there are many tools in the marketplace today that we see that solve a lot of different issues. And these tools, otherwise known as best-of-breed applications, help organizations to balance the demand for delivering software faster with the importance of maintaining a high level of software quality before that software reaches the hands of your end users, who could impact the brand reputation of your company. This bad defects or incorrect software builds can actually lead to downtime in production or shipments between distribution centers, as an example. As you can see in the bottom quadrant of the screen, there's many different best-of-breed tools available in the marketplace today, and TaskTop is in the business of ensuring that these tools can communicate effectively and efficiently with one another. So looking at this slide, we see across the top the different personas, and we see the artifacts that are most common within many different types of organizations, ranging from initiatives and features being created at the PPM level, all the way down through service desk components, such as trouble tickets being entered, incidents, change requests, or alerts for that matter. In the middle of the screen, you can see developers typically focus their time on updating tasks assigned to them and working on that, building good working software, whereas quality assurance and testing analysts are more focused on writing tests, executing those tests, and submitting defects to be fixed by the development team and then retested by the QA team. Another component as well that TaskTop Integration Hub helps with is not only synchronizing or moving artifacts across different systems from person to person, but also centralizing the storage of those artifacts within a database of your choice. And as we get into the webinar today and speak about some of the key components, we'll actually bring to light some of the capabilities of our tool and how it relates to improving the quality assurance within your organization. So before we do that, I would like to surface or illuminate a few different key trends that the organizations across the world are actually conveying back to an organization known as the World Quality Report, or a sort of a collaborative effort between a few different companies, Capgemini, Micro Focus, and Sogeti. I want to draw your attention to what a lot of the practitioners and leaders within these different organizations are saying about software quality assurance and testing. So one of the key points here is that the survey results indicate that a hybrid agile framework is really the new norm. Organizations are adopting bits and pieces of the popular models that we see out here, SAFe, Scrum, Kanban, XP, DSDM, and also varying levels of waterfall delivery methodologies. In varying combinations as well. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's really a flavor of a little bit here, a little bit there, and what works for your organization over the course of time. Also, survey respondents, 99%, are saying they're still having difficulties with testing in agile development. And this is extremely worrying, particularly as challenges persist across the board with little change since last year's study. Another point that came out of this past year's report is a common challenge among practitioners are difficulties in identifying the right areas on which tests should focus, okay? And early involvement of testing team in inception phase or sprint planning. I want to underscore those two areas quickly here. Difficulties in identifying the right areas on which tests should focus, and early involvement of testing team in inception phase or sprint planning. Both of these common challenges reported amongst practitioners can effectively be solved through more of a focus on value stream integration, and we'll demonstrate that in today's webinar. And the last bullet point that we pulled out of the World Quality Report is around the research showing that the proportion lacking skills in test strategy and design has grown from 22% in 2016 to 32% in 2017. Now, this can be debated, but my opinion is that the lack of skills in practitioners being able to develop effective test strategy and design from 2016 to 2017 can be related to perhaps the lack of understanding of how end-to-end value stream integration can help create a more effective holistic testing strategy for an organization. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of the 7 key reasons why. The first thing that we're going to speak about today is understanding defect detection percentage. Before we talk about the actual formula of this key performance indicator, what I'd like to do is take a quick pause, and I'd like the audience and the folks listening to this call, to think about this for a second. How often are you asked these same questions? For me as a practitioner, coming from a consulting background in my career to helping teams navigate their way through various testing layers of large-scale implementations, I was often hit with these questions from my counterparts and superiors in projects about, hey, how effective is your regression testing suite? What data do you have to support the effectiveness of your testing? Can you show me how regression test coverage has improved for this last release? Do we know what regression tests to improve based on bugs that we missed? How many bugs have we missed? How are we doing as compared to other teams in the same industry? These are all questions that sometimes are subjective if you don't have the correct data to back it up. And we're going to show you how to gather that data and formulate it into a metric that makes sense that you can convey back to the people asking you these questions. So think about that for a second. How often are you asked these questions? I'm assuming often in your career. And what we'd like to do at this moment is take a quick little break and have you answer 3 distinct questions. So Sarah's going to go ahead and administer a poll right now. And if you could so kindly answer these questions, because this ties in directly to the calculation of defect detection percentage, which we're going to show in the next few slides.
Okay, so here's the first poll. We'll leave that up for a second. Go ahead and get your answers in. Thank you very much. I see some of you responding. A couple more. Okay, we're going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And so there you go. And we see most of you are. And there is still some confusion about the difference between defects and incidents. Let's get the next one going. Okay, do you track defects by test stages? Let us know. So far, no one is unsure what a defect is, so good. I like it. Keep it coming. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That one's pretty even there, isn't it, Matt?
It is. It is. And we have one more here with a target release.
Yeah. There we go. Answers still coming in. Okay, give you 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. The poll results, are pretty even between, tracking defects. One of the things I want to address is the distinction between a defect and an incident in the context of what we're speaking about today. So a bug or a defect is related to anything that has been uncovered by quality assurance and testing. Not what has been uncovered by your end users consuming your software. So we would call that an incident. Okay, that's what we're going to refer to that as today, is somebody that's using your software, even internal business users, if you're talking about ERP applications, logging an incident in a tool, in an ITSM tool as an example. A defect would be something that went awry during the actual test execution phases of a project, albeit unit, system integration, user acceptance testing, or regression testing. Anything that happens in those phases would be logged as a defect. The two other questions we have here: do you track defects by test stages? This is important. This level of granulation actually helps us to calculate DDP across different stages, and you're going to see why that matters here in a second. And then the third one is, do you track defects by target release? Target release meaning, where did you target to release this build? There's attributes within various tools that you can begin to track that too, and that helps as well in the DDP equation that we'll show you here in a quick second. So let's move on to DDP itself and why it's so simple yet complex, okay? DDP is truly a simple equation to understand. So for each testing stage, whether that be unit, system, integration, UAT, regression, you're going to log defects. It's inevitable, right? Eventually, you're going to deploy or release into your production environment. So let's face it, you can't test forever. Sooner or later, the business will accept that you have covered all your different testing scenarios within the application under test, and it's time to release the software to your business or consumers. So let's say you found 20 defects in regression testing stage of your last monthly service pack, and you released it to your production environment on June 1st. Okay, so June 1st, your end users throughout the world, they're working with your software and identifying incidents, okay, because it's been released to the productive environment, or things that just don't look right. They're logging those incidents in tools like ServiceNow, Zendesk, Remedy, or even Solution Manager from SAP. Now fast forward 27 days, and now it's June 27th. In that period of time, your end users identified 12 incidents. That is from June 1st to June 27th. And then let's take a look at how it's calculated. Okay, so you see how this all works together. You have your testing stages in here in an amber color. You're logging your defects. You deploy here June 1st, and then incidents are being logged there, and then you stop your measurement at a certain point in time. We stopped it after 27 days. Now, the calculation, again, simple, would be to take 20 defects found in the regression test stage. You'll add together the defects found in the test stage prior to releasing into production and the incidents found in your incidents log period. In this case, that's 32. So your DDP for this example is 63%. So let's take a look at this graphically to crystallize the concept a little bit more. Here you can see in this scenario, you deployed the build to production on June 1st, so your y-axis on the left tracks both the count of defects and incidents identified, whereas you see on the right over here, you're tracking the defect detection percentage. Notice that your DDP, it starts at 100% on the day of deployment or release to your productive environment. As your end users get their hands on the software and start using it, they inevitably are going to encounter incidents. As incidents are logged, we see a gradual dip in your DDP calculation from 100%. You can see it kind of going downward all the way down to 63%. This is obviously a fictitious example, okay? Now, what does this mean and why does it matter? So a lot of organizations today are using a multitude of different agile planning tools in their ecosystems through mergers and acquisitions, or just given the fact that different teams have different tastes of what they want to use for tracking various defects or bugs. Some teams use Visual Studio Team Services, others might use Micro Focus ALM.net, others are using Jira as an example. Whereas on the operations side of the house, you might be using tools like BMC, Remedy, or ServiceNow, or Cherwell. So these different tools need to be able to communicate with one another in order to calculate DDP holistically across the board. Now, DDP of 90% plus can mean a few different things, okay? So here are the implications. It's either your testing is really good and you're trapping all the necessary bugs before they hit your productive environment, or it could be, hey, there's limited usage of your application under test in a real-world scenario during that measurement period. So you have to be careful. You have to understand, is there actual usage occurring there? A low DDP, let's say less than 65%, could mean a multitude of things as well. It could mean your requirements are ambiguous. You're not developing the right types of test cases to test out those requirements. Therefore, you're not finding defects because your test cases are lackluster. Perhaps you have a lack of QA and testing involvement early on in your software development lifecycle. We're going to show you today how you can combat that with value stream integration. Perhaps you have a limited use of data sets for automated regression testing cycles. Okay, perhaps you have inexperienced exploratory testers or unstable software with not enough time to test. The point of the matter is tracking DDP over the course of time by ensuring that all these different artifacts, defects, and incidents are calculated in real time from a multitude of different tributaries flowing into this primary river will help you to notice the different trends and take corrective action quickly, okay? But it's really not all about just synchronizing this data or bringing it into a central data store. We also can use enabling technology like Tasktop Integration Hub to help us swim upstream. And this example here is around root cause analysis. You can see here on the top, you have obviously symptoms and you have problems and you have causes that result in symptoms, right? Root cause analysis is about identifying the root cause. And to do that, I have noticed in my career that it means taking the incidents logged and understanding specifically the reasons that have contributed to that breakdown or that that failure that occurred in your productive environment, and then kind of swimming upstream, okay? Going from that point of, hey, we didn't trap this before it got released to our productive environment. Why is that? And then you use the technique of the 5 whys, where you start peeling back one layer at a time. So you might look at your test cases that were part of that feature functionality, your regression test cases, to understand, are they ineffective? Have they not covered enough of this area or that area? Was a data set not robust enough to plug in the necessary negative type of testing that would have uncovered this defect that was found by our business end users? And then you start to uncover specific reasons as to why that test case was inadequate to begin with, right? So you start to identify procedural breakdowns in your communication efforts between development and quality assurance, and then you can look to remedy that by tightening up the procedures or closing different loops, okay? You can also look at the traceability back to your originating requirements. Oftentimes what we see is organizations don't have a closed loop process when it comes to change requests being traced back to originating requirements, which in turn alert the associated test cases that need to be updated as a result. We'll show you a little bit more about that in a few slides ahead. It also can lead to more effective risk-based quality management, predictive analytics as well. Hey, in the future, it seems that defects seem to rear their ugly head in many of the same spots due to complexity within the software and due to inherent complexity with integrations and interfaces. What we do as a company at Tasktop is we solve those difficult problems by integrating software, but as you know, you're integrating a lot of your software that you're testing with other products via RESTful-based APIs or integrations of some sort. We see that a lot within SAP-ran organizations as an example. And ultimately what this all leads to, swimming upstream through root cause analysis and identification, is, hey, better control and increased business confidence and overall better, good working software for your end users and stakeholders, okay? So now that's DDP at a high level. We're also going to be holding a deep dive session on DDP in August timeframe. Those that have signed up for this webinar will get more information on that shortly, where we'll actually show you real world examples of DDP calculations being done in real time through some reports we'll build out, okay? Number 2 is value stream integration, eliminating QA as an afterthought activity for software releases. If you're a quality assurance or testing manager listening today, you know as well as I do that oftentimes we need to advocate the importance of quality assurance and testing in our organizations. What DDP does, and just explained before, it helps you elevate your brand throughout the organization. If people are looking at a metric and analyzing the trend of that metric over the course of time, it illuminates the need for test process improvements. It also raises the profile of your QA and testing team. It's going to help you predict future defect levels, as I just mentioned to you, and allows you to spot trends and changes over time. Now, there's a lot of quality assurance and testing metrics available out there today. And, granted, I've written articles on this and we have built, metrics and reporting strategies for organizations with, a multitude of different types of test reports. But how often do you hear of executives diving into, bug closure reports or those very, very specific types of reports where they need to drill down to each level to see if people are actually being held accountable? Now, having a key performance indicator like DDP at a higher level answers the all-important question of how are we doing? It really just drills down to the crux of how are we doing? How is our testing effort? Is it effective or is it not? Now, upstream visibility is one of the things that value stream integration helps solve. Okay, so when you think of upstream visibility, it allows QA analysts to be involved in the earliest stages of requirements definition and development. I would often hear this in my career in different consulting engagements. We need to get QA involved early on so that they understand the requirements. When organizations are using a variety of tools to hash out requirements, it gives testers using specialized tools with line-of-sight visibility in order to start crafting their high-level testing scenarios based on pre-approved requirements that the solutions team has decided upon. This is especially helpful in highly decentralized environments that we see today. So this line of sight upstream visibility ensures that test analysts, architects, QA leads, and managers know what potentially is coming down the pike in terms of new requirements, change requests, and enhancement requests. It doesn't mean that the QA analyst needs to act right away, but it gives them visibility into the discussions occurring amongst the business and solutions team, which in effect gives you guys a head start in drafting your high-level testing scenarios. So number 3 is effective change impact analysis, control, and management of change requests. So change impact analysis here. Too many organizations that I've seen are tracking their change requests separately from their primary work artifacts of the software delivery lifecycle. There's been many different occasions where I'll notice change requests being tracked in SharePoint lists, as an example, or offline Excel spreadsheets, although best-of-breed test management tools are being used. They're not being used effectively, and therefore there's a gap in communication. But before we talk about the reasons why this matters and how to close the loop on it, let's conduct a quick poll to see how you track change requests today. Sarah, can you go ahead and administer that poll?
Yeah, I think it should have just shown up on your screen. So where do you track change requests? I'm getting some people in to respond. Okay, give it just a couple more seconds. Okay. Okay, quite a mix there. And the next one. Do you trace or link the change request back to the originating requirements? Let us know. I see the very first person to respond was the person who says yes always. They're really eager to let us know how well they're doing. Get a couple more people. Here we go. Thank you, everyone. Get that closed. Okay. And one more. So, does your QA team have a process to review test cases related to a requirement that a change request has been traced back to? There's a character limit, by the way, on questions in GoToWebinar, so kind of have to try to get this as succinct as possible. I think you understand what we mean, though. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Great. So it seems to be that a few of the participants on the call, actually most of them, are saying that, if you have time to do a lot of these different things, right? So what we notice a lot in the world of quality assurance and testing is our time scale is often pressured or shrank depending on budget, depending on if there's any overruns in development, things like that. And sometimes we're working with limited resources and time to cover as much ground as we possibly can. What I'm going to show you next on this screen, and I empathize with that issue around time. It's something that I faced myself in trade-offs and resource trade-offs and such. But one of the things I do want to share is, with value stream integration and tying together the one question at the top was logging your incidents in your ITSM tool, and also two is tracking your change requests into your ITSM tool, right? Incidents and change requests. Now, if you have them tracked in your ITSM tool and you're testing in another tool, okay, but you don't have a bridge between those two tools to say if a change request is approved within our ITSM tool, we have a set or a batch of test cases that may or may not be affected by that change request. But before we can make that determination as to whether those test cases are impacted, we need to be able to trace that change request back to an originating requirement. These are fundamentals in terms of quality assurance 101, and there are tools in place today that are designed to make that easier. But the fundamental of value stream integration is being able to take those change requests and move them over into your other tool, as an example, if you want to do that, and associate them with an originating requirement that has then already been traced to different test cases to provide you with the capability to see what associated test cases have been alerted as a result of that change request being traced to the originating requirement. It sounds complex, but it's actually fairly easy if you think about it. It's 3 different steps. It's your change request, determining if it's approved or not. It's tracing that change request to an originating requirement, okay? And then it's seeing what test cases associated with that requirement may or may not need to be changed as a result. Okay, a lot of tools in the marketplace today have inherent alerting capabilities in them, but in order for those alerting capabilities to kick off, the email or the alert or what have you that, hey, somebody needs to take a look at these test cases and ensure whether they're automated or manual test cases, there needs to be something touching that originating requirement that's been traced to them, okay? So this is something that can be enabled through value stream integration as well, okay? Now, the fourth point here is cross-platform artifact alerting. Now, this is I'm going to speak about a little bit more about how this can help you illuminate redundancy and inefficiency in your test coverage, right? I just spoke about it a little bit, but I want to give you a diagram of how the ripple effect of changes can affect your test cases. So without a closed loop process, I say up here, when traversing multiple tools, your test cases that were once designed to cover the original requirement may now be missing branch steps or data points that are necessary to fully exercise the originating requirement. So by ensuring that everything is closed and there's a closed loop process and there's data feeding over from your ITSM tool in terms of change requests over into your other tools, and ensuring that the alerting capabilities are in place down to the test cases, you're in effect improving the quality of your test cases, right? The steps involved in actually carrying out your validation tests, whether it's manual or automated test cases, okay? So this is a very, very important aspect to keep in mind. And what it also does for you, as I mentioned, is it helps you to eliminate redundancy. What we see oftentimes is organizations running tests that aren't even relevant to to the change request. So it's just a waste of time and resources, whereas you don't need to waste that time if you're able to review this in a closed loop process, okay? And inefficient test cases as well. It's testing things within a test case that don't need to be tested, or testing multiple of the same thing that do not need to be done. You have that ability to illuminate it with value stream integration, okay? Now, on to the final point here. Well, this actually relates to what I just described. This is the integration pattern that we often see between business analysts and testers. The tests that are executed and the requirements in another system having the flow of information and the statuses flow back and forth here. So number 5 is shifting left contains cost while also aiding in root cause analysis. We spoke about root cause analysis and the previous slides. RCA is extremely helpful for peeling back the onion and understanding where the breakdown in communication occurred. So shifting left is not so much about swimming upstream, even though it would make sense, right? Shifting left is you're going all the way to the left. It's really about thinking through the yin and yang, right, of software quality, prevention versus detection and testing, right? To me, if you look at this diagram on the right, you see quality assurance is not by definition the same as testing. So testing is detective activities. You're testing through your application under test. You're finding defects and uncovering bugs. Quality assurance is improvement of development process, prevention of bugs appearing. Now, embracing the mindset around value stream integration and how your products work with one another helps you to not only improve the dynamic aspects of detection, the testing, but also too, it gives you the necessary, shall I say, momentum to identify the improvements that you need to make in your development processes to prevent bugs from occurring, or to prevent the detection of these bugs in later phases of testing. Okay, so shifting left balances the focus with preventative techniques, and the value stream integration mindset is really around line of sight upstream to prevent ambiguity of requirements. Okay, as we described in the previous slide, giving your testing team that visibility into requirements that are being developed perhaps in a different tool. Early line of sight visibility gives them the capability, your team, to start working on high-level test scenarios or thinking about what needs to be tested to fit that into your capacity and your workload. It also provides root cause analysis from incidents to requirements for both risk-based quality management and predictive analytics. So one of the things that my opinion is that communication failures, whether it be between people, between processes or tools on your team, are truly the root cause of a lot of these defects. So there we have it, is that value stream thinking can be really an effective tool in your arsenal for prevention of defects, because failure in communication is most commonly the direct cause of ambiguous requirements, whether that's failure for a developer to communicate either verbally or through the artifacts that are being created, such as specifications coming from business analysts to developers, from perhaps your manager conveying to you what you're supposed to be working on or not working on that particular week, or your Scrum Master if you're an Agile team, or your product owner to your Scrum Master. Perhaps the interactions between your developments or your developers and your testers, there could be a breakdown in communication there, or a breakdown in communication between your executive heads to your department heads. That also happens as well. Some common examples of these are missing business needs and user stories, or perhaps incorrect specifications for a critical component. Those also occur. So number 6 is the reduction of ping-ponging between developers and testers. This is a big one, right? There has been a lot of talk in the industry about how there's a lot of overhead, right? If you think about it, between developers and testers, and the communication needs to be fluid. It needs to be seamless so that developers are able to recreate defects and incidents quickly and be able to fix them, right? To get down to the crux of the matter, understand how was this bug even realized in the first place. Let's do some troubleshooting on it, and let's get to the crux of the matter and fix it and promote it back up so that QA can retest it, pass it, and we can move this along and keep the speed moving. So, here this slide says, hey, the burden of proof is real, right? The struggle is real. So manual and automated testing generates evidence. You have your inputs, you have your outputs, which consist of data sets and parameters. You're gonna have screenshots of your application under test, videos of the application under test, system log files, things like that. So best of breed add-on manual test tools, they're everywhere. Different products that you use, if you sign up for Visual Testing or Visual Studio Team Services, as an example, you can now install a Chrome extension as part of the testing module to go ahead and use as part of to accelerate your manual testing efforts. There's Micro Focus Sprinter, there's Qtest Explorer from QA Symphony. There's a lot of other sort of add-on tools, or they come sort of ingrained in their platforms that help accelerate manual testing and provide the proof or capture the evidence. But the problem is this: if you're using a multitude of different tools, or if your teams are using another tool to solve defects or to field or triage defects, such as Jira as an example, say your development team is using Jira and your testing team happens to be using Microsoft TFS. So all this data that's being generated as evidence, how is that going to be brought over into these other tools? And that's where value stream integration is a critical component to ensuring that your development team is seeing the evidence generated from these best-of-breed add-on manual tools. So if you look at this slide here, or this flow integration diagram, you see tying together testers with developers and making sure that all of the associated evidence, the screenshots, the data inputs, the data outputs, all that stuff that the tester has went through, even attachments to these defects such as videos, can be flowed over into another tool, but that's through value stream integration. That's through moving this data through these different tools so that the right people have the right information in their hands to get to the crux of the matter and fix the defect. That's what the developers do. And then to set the status to retest, that flows back to the testers to be able to retest and move on. But in order to do that, they need the information that the testers have seen. So that's another key component. And finally, is one size does not fit all for testing centers of excellence. There was an article that I wrote a few years ago, actually it was about 7 or 8 years ago, on building SAP testing centers of excellence. I had some experience doing this in pieces throughout my career, being as part of many different SAP rollouts and implementations. One of the things about it is there's an opportunity to standardize, right? I mean, that's the whole premise of implementing ERPs, standardize and realizing economies of scale from that standardization. So the test factory model became very popular. This was in the mid-late 2000s, where the test factory was a big thing, right? Offshoring to teams was the modus of operandum for a lot of different organizations, okay? What we're noticing, and also the World Quality Report is also realizing, is there is what they call a testing excellence center that's coming to fruition. And testing excellence centers are more or less coaching type of organizations within your overall organizations that help you to select your best of breed tools and use value stream integration to bring these tools together, as opposed to dictating what tools you're going to use as a organization across different departments. Okay, so that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing testing excellence centers, not testing centers of excellence. And this is validated by the surveys done by the World Quality Report as well. So I know we're running a little short. It's 12:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sarah just pinged me. So we're going to go ahead and open this up to a few questions at the end. Sarah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. And again, get your questions into the questions panel. Just enter them in there and I will get them ready for Matt as well. So we had a couple of others come in while you were speaking. The first one was actually related to what you were just talking about. With they have a testing center of excellence, and they basically dictate the tool uses and any changes. So is value stream integration something that can encourage a best-of-breed tooling mindset? Is that something that can help with that
Yeah.
transition?
No, yeah, that's a great question. So the thing about it is a lot of organizations over the course of time have invested significant time and resources to building out their testing centers of excellence. And there's been a lot of work around process and procedure put into place, alignment of global teams to ensure that everybody's on the same page for the TCOE and how it operates. Value stream integration and having a value stream integration mindset across the organization does indeed sort of change the approach that is often taken from a TCOE standpoint. Some TCOs will say, hey, we're encouraging companies to bring their own tools and to, work within the realm of the actual standards that we put in place to use those tools. But oftentimes it's stifled because there's a limitation in terms of what you can use and what you can't use. Whereas if you have a true mindset around value stream integration, and that is sort of embraced as a culture in your organization, embraced in your culture, and you have the right enabling technology to, move artifacts between tools, it opens it up much larger. And then you have testing excellence centers, and you become more coaches and guides throughout your different departmental areas on what tools that they can use, as opposed to sort of dictating, the path that a lot of people have to take with their tools of choice. They can use what they feel is necessary, as long as you can hook in to, quote unquote, the models provided through value stream integration.
Great, thank you. And we had another person say that you focused a lot on DDP. Can you give us other KPIs that we should be using for QA and testing managers?
No, it's a great question. I'm not going to run down through a big list of quality assurance and testing metrics at this point, but there's a lot of them, obviously, that you can track. DDP is a KPI that is necessary to track, in my opinion, but it also is one of the metrics that really involves a multitude of different tools, right? Whereas some of the other quality assurance and testing metrics, if you just focused strictly on the testing piece of it, the execution, what tests have passed, what tests have failed, oftentimes you can develop those directly out of those best-of-breed tools. Whereas DDP is a metric that is calculated from many tools sort of working or talking together.
Great. We had another person say, value stream integration seems like it would involve a lot of different departments. Do you have kind of any recommendations for how to facilitate these cross-functional discussions in order to kind of get started?
I do, and that's part of the challenge as well, is getting different departments to sort of sing from the same song sheet, if you will. And oftentimes that requires facilitation amongst departments and sort of understanding trade-offs, value trade-offs of moving one way versus the other. What we often do and what we have done at TaskTop is we provide what we refer to as value stream integration coaching sessions, sort of consulting sessions, where we help your team develop an integration diagram, showcasing what you have at play within your organization, and you can sort of use this as a rally piece to come together and put this up on a whiteboard as an example, and then start to really talk through how you can infuse value stream integration into your organization across different departmental areas. It's important, I think, at times too, to have sort of an independent third-party individual facilitating some of those conversations, as opposed to somebody that's ingrained in your team, such as, you might have a very respected quality leader or a testing manager that works for your organization. You might be one yourself, but sometimes it's not in your best interest to be the one facilitating those conversations. Even though you know all of the tools and products and people inside and out, it might be helpful to have an independent third-party set of eyes to come in and help facilitate those conversations and build a software lifecycle architecture diagram, as you see on the screen here, and then to help your organizations decide how you want to architect these products and tools together in order to elevate your level of quality assurance and testing.
Great. Yeah, and as you see on there, Matt did turn to the slide, so you can go to go.tasktop.com/value stream integration diagram and request one of those diagrams. That's a great way to get started. So you have something visual to help facilitate those discussions, and we can kind of take you through it from there. So if you have any other questions, get them in shortly. Otherwise, I think we're going to maybe end a couple minutes early. So when does that ever happen? I'll just wait a couple more seconds, but thank you again, everyone, for attending the webinar. It was great to have you here. Thank you for participating in the polls. And we'll, as I said earlier, we will be sending you an email with a link to the recording, and some, we'll also include the link to this page as well if you are interested in getting a diagram set up as well. So thank you, everyone, and this concludes the webinar.
Thank you, Sarah.